I want to share something that happened to me 2 years ago. I think my story is an exceptionally strange and special experience for one very specific reason. I am blind. As far as I know, I'm the only blind person who has had anything like this happen to them. My blindness isn't congenital. I lost my sight in a car accident in 2017. That same accident also left me with a broken jaw, collapsed lung, lacerated liver, and collapsed L4-L5 disc that required replacement and spinal fusion. The biggest hurdle, though, was completely losing my ability to see after living for 33 years with perfect vision. I now have total blindness, which means I can't see any form of light, shapes, or colors. Basically, I see nothing. My experience started while I was at home. This is the same home I was in before my accident and where I still live today. On this particular night, I was in my bathroom doing my nightly routine before going to bed and noticed something very unusual. I felt a strange change in pressure. It was similar to when the air pressure affects your ears, say when you're in an airplane or driving over a mountain pass. It came over me all at once and gave me the sensation of the atmosphere itself pressing against me. Along with this feeling was a sound that was at such a low frequency, I wasn't even sure I was hearing anything, but I do remember turning the bathroom sink off so I could concentrate on it, and once I focused, it was definitely there. A constant, incredibly low tone. At that moment, I wasn't alarmed or worried, it was just something I noticed. Then I finished up and went to bed. The minute I laid down and it was quiet, the sound intensified. The low bass of it was so strong I could feel the hair on my arms and head subtly moving. It was like being under a giant speaker where I could feel the waves of pressure moving the air around me. I had no idea what could be making this happen, so I sat up in bed. The moment I sat up, I felt something I wasn't at all prepared for. Someone's hand gently touched me and I could feel their fingers wrap around my wrist. At that same instant, a feeling of overwhelming euphoria and calmness came over me. I have a hard time describing it because it was such a powerful and pleasant sensation. I stopped caring about the fact someone was holding my wrist in my own bedroom and let go of even wanting to question it. Whoever it was helping me stand up beside my bed. As soon as I was upright, I felt warmth and weightlessness like I had been lowered into a perfectly warm hot tub with soft bubbles around me. I willingly leaned backward into the sensation and completely lost track of everything else around me. I had no idea if I was awake or dreaming. The next thing I remember was being in a chair that was so comfortable it felt like it was molded specifically for my body. I could also tell there was something at the top of the chair keeping my head in place. I heard the sound of a very quiet machine circling around my head that reminded me of the newer X-ray machines at the dentist that spin around you while you bite down and stand still. That's actually what I was picturing as I heard it pass around me several times. The euphoric feeling was still there during this, but it was around that time that I started to feel it wearing off slightly. That allowed questions to pop into my head about what was happening. Whatever it was felt medical or clinical, and I tried to remember if I had gone in for a surgery or had been in another accident because it had similarities to that, but I could only remember being in my bathroom and going to bed. Finally, I spoke out loud and asked whoever was near me where I was. An unmistakable female voice told me everything was fine and that I would be home soon. My perception of time was all over the place, but shortly after I asked that question, I was helped out of the chair and guided forward by 2 people holding each of my arms that walked with me. If I had to guess, it felt like they helped me walk about the length of a tennis court. That might not be a great unit of measurement, but I played tennis when I was younger, and that's about what the distance felt like. As we were walking, I very clearly and loudly asked if I was in the hospital and got no response. I grew more insistent and stopped walking, which in turn stopped all 3 of us from moving forward, then demanded to know what was happening. The female voice finally said something again and told me I had been chosen, then explained I was part of a study. After asking why, I was told it was because I was healthy overall, but had lost my sight and had endured significant physical and emotional trauma. Then she repeated that I was fine and they were only helping me back home. None of it made sense, and her saying that did nothing to help me understand the situation. I pulled my arms back, trying to make them let go and physically showing them I wasn't comfortable. Then I felt both of them lift me off the ground from under my arms. I weigh 125 pounds, but they picked me up like I was a small child. As they lifted me, it felt like they were pushing me up to a very high height, but at the same time, I also felt like I was falling back down toward the ground in an almost soft free fall. It was a very weird sensation of up and down simultaneously. I heard the same ultra-low frequency that felt so strong this time, I could have sworn it was shaking my actual organs. Everything was vibrating as if the frequency itself was the force lifting me up. It got to the point where all I could physically do was lean my head back, and that was the end of my experience. I didn't have any feelings of suddenly waking up or losing consciousness and coming to. I was just lying on my back in my bed again. Thoroughly confused, I did feel around to confirm I was really there, which I was. Then I checked the time and it was 7:30 in the morning. I sat there for what felt like forever, thinking about it and telling myself that it was a dream. By the time I got up and out of bed, I was convinced it was a dream. Anything else seemed silly to me. It wasn't until I was standing in the shower that I had a realization, and this is what changed my mind about what happened. Since losing my sight, I have never once had a dream where I couldn't see. All of my dreams were visual then and still are now. I can always see the people I know and the places I remember in my dreams, along with colors and light and everything else. I don't even question having sight again when I'm dreaming. It just seems normal to me like it always has. Whatever I had gone through was not visual at all. I had heard and felt everything but seen nothing. That realization made me seriously dig deep and question my experience. If I had been dreaming, I should have been able to see what was going on. I have talked with two people about this, my brother and a friend I've known since grade school. My brother, who assures me it was only a dream, even spent some time looking it up online, and he explained that people who lose their sight later in life will often continue to dream visually for years, but eventually their dreams can change to reflect their new daily life. He is certain that's what happened, and he's told me not to waste any more time analyzing it. My friend Amber, however, had a completely different reaction. She didn't think it sounded anything like a dream. To her, it had a lot of similarities with stories from people who have been abducted. She's very interested in the paranormal, so her perspective didn't surprise me. The truth is, until she said that, I hadn't thought of it. I do want to be clear and say that I still don't have a definite opinion either way. It could absolutely have been my first blind dream, and I'm completely open to that. I've even thought that the whole medical vibe it had could stem from my actual trauma and time in the hospital, and I'm open to that too. I just find it weird that if it was a dream, why is it the only dream I've had that isn't visual? My name is Cassidy, or Cass for short. I was born and raised in Vermont in an A-frame home back in the trees like something out of a postcard. My parents are what most people would call hippies or naturalists, but I call them normal. They grew a lot of the food we ate, so we were always picking vegetables, herbs, and berries, and we had a small orchard of apple and pear trees that my dad planted before I was born. We also had chickens and a few rabbits. Everything about life in that house felt tied to the land, and my parents loved living off-grid before it was cool. I was also homeschooled until high school and spent just as much time outside learning about the world from my parents as I did with books at the kitchen table. Weeding the gardens, collecting eggs, helping my dad change the oil in his truck. Those were all normal parts of growing up for me, and it was the best childhood I could have asked for. It's the kind that more kids need today. That was the backdrop for something that happened to me on the night of my 8th birthday. It had been a fun day of having friends over and playing games outside, along with cake and gifts and the usual birthday traditions. When it was over and after I'd gone upstairs for the night, I was sitting up in bed with a coloring book on my knees and I heard someone calling my name from downstairs. At least that's what it sounded like, but it didn't sound like my mom or dad. The voice was higher and very clear, and I was sure that I heard my name. I climbed out of bed and walked downstairs. Our A-frame had a big open front section with huge windows going all the way up to the ceiling, and I slept up in the loft part of the house while my parents were in the one downstairs bedroom that was next to the kitchen. When I was coming down the stairs, I realized the voice calling me wasn't even inside. It was coming from outside in front of the house. I remember looking out the windows, and since the moon had been bright that night, I could see one of our rabbits sitting in the front yard. It just so happened to be my favorite rabbit, the one I loved the most and had named Mr. Rabbit. This is going to sound weird, but when I saw him out there, I connected him with the voice I was hearing, like he was the one calling me. I know how it sounds to say that, but at that age, it felt oddly natural, like of course Mr. Rabbit would call me if he needed my help. All I could think of was that he had gotten out somehow and needed me to open the door so he could come inside where it was safe. Without any hesitation, I pulled the front door wide open, looking at him the whole time, then stepped down our 2 wooden steps and walked barefoot onto the cold grass. The instant my feet felt the temperature difference, something shifted in my thought process, and I suddenly knew that it had not been my rabbit calling my name. In reality, he wasn't even outside. About 20 feet in front of me, where the edge of the grass stopped at the trees, I saw 3 child-sized figures about the same height as me standing in our yard. They were close together and watching me. They had no facial expressions but didn't look threatening, just still, like when you walk up on a deer and it stands there staring at you. I could feel my breath stop when one of them stepped forward and reached an arm out to me as if to say, "Take my hand." Then I heard the same small voice that had been calling me say they were friends of my mother's and they were there to pick me up. Even at 8 years old, I had enough common sense to know that wasn't true. I shook my head firmly and said, "No, you're not my mom's friends." That was when the one who had its arm out walked up to where I was standing and got so close that we were nearly touching. I was face to face with something totally unknown to me. It was another living, breathing being, but not like me. Its skin was light but also textured, and because it was so close to me and with the light from the moon, I could see the faintest layer of fine hair, just like we all have if you look close enough. Its eyes were the most unforgettable part. They were almond-shaped and black, and I just stared at them. I want to add something here. This was not a scary experience. It could be because I was taught from birth to love and respect all living creatures, but I was in a state of amazement, not fear. Then, as if to show me we were more similar than I thought, it reached up and pinched the corner of its own eye and peeled the black part away, exactly like a contact lens being pulled off. And underneath, I saw the most breathtakingly beautiful blue eye I have ever seen. It was deep and clear and larger than any human eye, but still familiar. This image has stayed with me my entire life. I was so focused I didn't even notice the other 2 had also walked close to me, and one of them took my hand to lead me down the walkway and away from the house. I didn't even think about resisting or going back inside. I thought it was amazing and even comforting. The only part I remember about walking down the path was feeling the tiniest pinch on the back of my arm and putting my head down. I was watching my own feet take steps, then I closed my eyes. I don't have any idea what happened after that or where I went with them. The next time my eyes opened, I was on our couch in the living room with a blanket and a pillow, and it was light outside. There were cartoons on TV, and I could hear my mom in the kitchen making breakfast. Apparently, she had found me asleep when she got up to make coffee and had turned on the TV and covered me up. I don't remember if I told her that same morning or later in the day, but when I explained what had happened to me, she openly listened and truly believed me. My mom is the kind of person you can tell anything to without being judged or looked at in a weird way. She even encouraged me to tell my dad too, which I did. They both firmly believe I had some kind of paranormal experience with other life forms, though we can only guess what it was or who they were. The only other memory I have of that morning was checking on Mr. Rabbit. He was perfectly fine and still in his hutch. I even sat with him on my lap and told him the story and how I thought he was calling me. As an adult, I hold this experience close. It's a part of my life and woven into who I am now. I don't share it often, but I don't hide it either. People have always seemed to respond positively to it, curious more than skeptical. What it really gave me, though, was a kind of open door in my mind at an early age. Since that night, I've lived my life totally aware and amazed by the things we can't explain. I like to think of it as a gift that makes my life richer and more mysterious, and really more magical. I also try to remind people that in the big scheme of things, with life and this universe and existence we're all living in, we barely understand a fraction of what's actually going on, and that's being generous. Be open to things that seem impossible, and like my mom and dad taught me through example, be kind if someone shares their experience with you. Before I begin, I just want to say that I live close to, if not in, a major hotspot for UFO activity in North America. My father and his father before him both have stories and have seen things for decades. This was not my first sighting, but it's the most memorable one. It occurred on August 23, 2025 during a trip up north with friends around Petoskey City, Michigan. It was me and my 3 friends, Josh, Kyle, and Shamoon. We were stargazing and taking in unobstructed views of the Milky Way, which was something that my buddy Shamoon had never gotten to do before. On that night, we encountered an unknown aerial object while just outside Petoskey city limits. We had gone out on a lonely dirt road miles from where we were staying and parked the car where there wasn't a soul around apart from the occasional passing car on the main road nearby. We had been watching a meteor shower and enjoying the most incredible view of the galactic core of our Milky Way, and had even been able to spot a nebula in full detail. As we were taking in the scenery, my friend Josh pointed north and said he thought he'd found Saturn, noticing a bright object near the horizon. While Josh was consulting a star chart app on his phone, Shamoon, Kyle, and I continued to look at it and saw the object suddenly move sideways. It had been stationary, then slid across the sky moderately fast and to the right before becoming perfectly still again. At that same moment, and while still looking at his phone, Josh said he didn't think it was Saturn because Saturn should have been to the east. I replied to him that Saturn also doesn't move. When Josh looked back up, he could see that the light had changed position and was now partially obscured by a few trees. Wanting to keep our eyes on it, we drove a little farther up the road to get a better view and got to a large field. When we got out of the car, we looked out across the field toward the horizon and could see the object much better than where we were before. The craft seemed to be about the size of a small airplane from where we were. In terms of its shape, it could have been a triangle or possibly some kind of cigar shape, but it's hard to be sure due to the angle we were viewing it from and the distance we were away from it. While we were in the field, the object hovered in one place for quite a while, then began making more sudden movements, all with complete silence. Josh and Kyle ran back to the car for a minute, leaving Shamoon and me there to continue staring at this unusual aircraft. That's when the impossible happened. It began zipping around very quickly and pulling off aerial maneuvers that no plane or pilot could ever do. It would go from perfectly stationary to suddenly looping around the sky, then back to dead still again. As this was happening, Shamoon's nerve gave out and he wanted to leave. When Kyle and Josh came back, Kyle saw the incredible aerial acrobatics and extremely sharp turns it was making too, and he also wanted to get out of there. I think everyone had a similar feeling, so we got back into the car and left as quickly as we could. While we were heading back into town, we could still see this object in the sky and realized it was in the same direction of our hotel, meaning we were not driving away from it, but toward it. I'll admit, part of me was excited to potentially get a closer look, but mostly I was spooked like the other guys. The entire way back to the hotel, the object stayed in our view and we never fully lost sight of it. When we got back, we parked and ran up to our room, then went out onto the balcony to keep watching it. Now seeing it from town, I would estimate that at its closest, this object was somewhere over Grand Traverse Bay, and it may have also gone around or beyond the hills of Harbor Springs. We had seen it from miles and miles away and assumed at the time it was much smaller and closer to where we were, and potentially posed a threat to us, only to realize that this craft was so large and so bright, you could see it from very far away. Realizing that killed the last theory I had, which was a drone. Had it been a normal drone, there is no way we would have been able to see it so clearly from so far out of town. We stood there and watched for quite a while longer, but eventually had to go to bed. At no point did it stop doing these bizarre aerial antics. Even when we went to bed, it was still darting around in the sky like a provoked insect, only to stop in one place and remain there before going right back into it. Since that night, I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. I grew up near an Air Force base. My friend Kyle has always been obsessed with all types of aircraft, and Shamoon is an Iraq War refugee. All of us have seen plenty of normal and military aircraft. No plane that any of us have ever encountered looks or behaves the way this did, and again, we never heard a sound out of it. We also never saw any kind of wing or tail lights, which virtually all conventional aircraft are required to have. The extraordinary movements it was making might have somewhat resembled how a drone can move, but this object was so much larger and more capable than any drone I've ever seen, and still should have had some kind of flashing lights on it if that's what it was. As I mentioned, this isn't the first unidentified object I've seen in the sky, and while my grandfather has stories of encountering actual alien beings, I've only ever seen strange things in the sky. Obviously, I can't say what we saw was an alien craft, but I also can't say that it wasn't. It's completely possible we saw some sort of unknown military technology, which might explain the odd shape and size of the thing, as well as the fact it was in the air and visible for so long. Whatever it was, it's made me watch the skies even more than I used to. I wanted to share my story because I think people up here should be aware that strange things are flying around in the sky. Perhaps others out there saw this same craft on the same night, maybe even up close, and can report their own sightings of it. I am convinced that something is going on in the skies over our planet, and the recent Pentagon investigations into the matter has shown that people are indeed encountering unknown aerial phenomena that can't be explained. Perhaps one day we will get an answer, or maybe we never can.